LEGO Star Wars Clone Troopers are really the most controversial aspect of the LEGO Star Wars community. I mean, not even really just the LEGO Star Wars community, really the LEGO community as a whole on the internet. From helmet holes to printed waist capes to clone troopers they did or did not include in a set, there's just so many different varying aspects and opinions on LEGO Star Wars Clone Troopers that basically just makes this list impossible to make not subjective. So because of that, yes, this might be the most controversial video I've ever made, and that's basically out of my control just because there's so many different varying opinions on LEGO Star Wars Clone Troopers. But still, regardless, I'm gonna do my best to rank all of them from worst to best. And ironically, we have a total of 66 Clone Troopers to get through, and yes, there have definitely been more than 66 different versions of LEGO Star Wars Clone Troopers made, but a lot of them had very minor differences. Like for example, the 2013 Clone Lieutenant coming in a polybag and not having leg printing versus the 2015 Clone Lieutenant that is the exact same figure but with leg printing categorized as a whole separate figure. And while it is technically a whole separate figure, I'm not going to be including all the little different clones like that. For example, in that scenario, I would just use the leg printed Clone Lieutenant and it would count as the 2013 version as well. Also, I won't be including any of the LEGO original series clones, as well as the Bad Batch and Captain Rex and the other old clones from Captain Rex's ATT. Anyways, like I said, we have a total of 66 Clone Troopers to get through, so let's get on with the list. Coming in at the number 66 spot, the worst LEGO Star Wars Clone Trooper in my opinion. This might be just a little bit spiteful, but I have SW1304 Commander Fox. This figure was released last year in 2023 in the 75354 Coruscant Guard gunship, and I say I kind of put this in last out of spite because Fox is one of my favorite Clone Troopers, and for 2023, LEGO did an awful job on him. And I know you're probably thinking that I'm just another YouTuber that's complaining about the Commander Fox, but I mean, he really is bad, and I think a lot of people can get behind me on this. For a character that we waited so long for, just for LEGO to do such a poor job is just very disappointing. Yes, he has the annoying printed waist cape, but the main problem with him is just the white printing that is slightly pink. It just does not look good. It was very disappointing for LEGO to kind of ruin one of our favorite Clone Troopers like this, and that's why I put it in last place. I mean, for 2023, LEGO definitely could have done better. Onto the 65th spot, I have the 2005 Phase 2 Clone Pilot. This figure appeared in two sets, being 7259 ARC 170 Fighter and 6205 V-Wing Fighter, and as much as I love the classic Phase 2 clones, I feel like LEGO just did not do the greatest job on this one compared to the others, mainly just because of the lack of printing on the front portion of his helmet. It just makes him look kind of off, and honestly, I don't really even know what this figure is based off of, because all of the classic Phase 2 Clone Troopers were based off of the Clone Troopers from the 2003 Clone Wars miniseries, but none of the Phase 2 pilots in that show really look like this at all. They all have some type of markings on the front of their helmet, so I don't think it's based off of those, and it's clearly not based off of the pilots in episode 3 because they have open helmets. So I mean, like I said, I really like the OG Phase 2 Clone Troopers, it's just this one is probably the weakest of the bunch. Up next, we have the 64th spot, and I have the newest Phase 2 212th Troopers. These guys appeared in 3 sets, obviously the most notable one being 75337 ATTE Walker, and honestly, the helmet holes on these guys don't even bother me. Really, the only thing that bothers me is the other main controversy with these guys, which is the helmet print. I know you've heard people complain about this time and time again, but the helmet just does not look good because the orange triangle doesn't come down to a point, and I'm not afraid to say that. I just don't think it looks good, and that's why I ranked it so low. Now we're kind of already at the point where none of these Clone Trooper minifigures from here on out are like bad figures. From this point on, they're all pretty good, so this is where it really starts to get subjective, but hey, I told you it's gonna be a pretty subjective ranking. Anyways, at the 63rd spot, I have SW0191 Phase 1 Clone Pilot. This figure appeared in 4 sets, the most notable one being 7674 V19 Torrent, and of course 10195 Republic Dropship with ATOT, and for 2008, I think this was a really solid figure. I honestly don't think LEGO could have done much better. Yeah, they could have added some leg printing to make him less bland, but he's got a really nice helmet print on top of the Clone Wars helmet, as long as a pretty decent torso print. This figure for 2008 was just all around pretty good. On to the 62nd spot, this one's probably gonna upset some people, but I have SW0058 Clone Trooper. This was the very first LEGO Star Wars Clone Trooper ever made, released all the way back in 2002, and appeared in 2 sets, being 7163 Republic Gunship and 4482 ATTE. And I said this is probably gonna upset some people because this is a classic Clone Trooper. They have a lot of nostalgia bias, and in this case, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I love all of the classic LEGO Star Wars Clone Troopers, but I mean, I gotta be realistic here, and for 2002, this Clone Trooper was great, but it's 2024 now, and it's obviously not gonna hold up. It's not even gonna hold up as good as the 2005 Phase 2 Clone Troopers, but for 2002, it was great, and I really like this Clone Trooper, and I think it's a staple of LEGO Star Wars. On to the 61st spot, I have SW0266 Phase 2 Clone clone pilot. This figure was released in 2010 in one set, being 8088 ARC 170 Starfighter, and for 2010 I think they did a great job. Like the Phase 1 clone pilot I just talked about, it's a bit bland because it doesn't have leg printing, but it's got a really awesome helmet design, and I like the color scheme with the sort of bluish gray and the white. Coming in at the 60th spot, I have SW1246 Clone Trooper Officer. This figure appeared in one set last year in 2023, being 75345 501st Clone Trooper Battle Pack. I personally like the other Clone Troopers in this battle pack quite a bit, but this one is just not as good as the other ones, and really the only reason I had to say that is because of his printed waist cape. It just does not look good. I don't care how many times you've heard people complain about this, it just does not look good to me. I don't like how it looks like he has two karate belts on the side of his legs. It doesn't even represent a waist cape at all. I mean, if you looked at this and did not know what it was supposed to be, you'd think it was just extra leg detailing. But the waist cape aside, I think the rest of the figure looks really nice, and that's why I put it at the 60th spot. Coming in at the 59th spot, I have SW0525 Clone Trooper V-Wing Pilot. This figure appeared in one set, being 75039 V-Wing Starfighter back in 2014, and I really like these sort of masked Clone Trooper pilots. I know the normal Phase 2 pilots have the exposed helmet that shows their face, and these guys have a similar helmet, except he's got sort of that white mask underneath, and I think it looks really awesome. However, I don't think the light gray and the white really mixes that well, and that's why I ranked him so low. Also, this was 2014, and leg printing was starting to become very common, and I think he definitely was not holding up. Coming in at the 58th spot, I have the newest Clone Trooper that everybody is after, being ARC Trooper 5s. This figure is currently only in one set, being 75387 boarding the Tantive 4, and honestly, I have such a love-hate relationship with this figure. I think the arm printing looks phenomenal, I love the torso printing, I even really like the leg printing because his waist cape has sort of a different shape and it doesn't make it look like two karate belts on the side of his legs. And yes, the helmet print is not accurate, and I always do prefer accuracy, but it doesn't look bad, like it's not ugly in any way. But what is ugly about this figure and why I ranked it so low is his pauldron. I don't know if you guys watched my review on this set, but I just went on and on and on about how his pauldron just looks flat out ugly. It sticks straight out on both sides, and you're supposed to put it above his backpack, and when I review sets, I always build them how LEGO wants you to build them, so I put it above his backpack, and it just looks terrible. It just sticks straight out on both sides, and honestly, it really just straight up ruins the figure for me. I think the rest of him is great, and that's why I put him at the 58th spot, but man, that pauldron is just flat out ugly. On to the 57th spot, I have SW0221 Clone Trooper Gunner. This figure appeared in two sets, being A014 Clone Walker Battle Pack and A039 Venator Class Republic Attack Cruiser, and like most of the 2008, 2009, 2010-ish Clone Wars clones, he looks really solid for that time period. Obviously, he wouldn't hold up today, he's pretty bland without his leg printing, but he does have some pretty cool aspects. I love the gold on his helmet as well as his gray arms. Next up, we have the 56th spot, and I have SW0265 Captain Jag. This figure appeared in one set back in 2010, being A088 ARC 170 Starfighter. He's very similar, if not identical, to the other pilot that's included in this set, but what sets him apart is the blue markings on his helmet, and I think they just look really awesome. The rest of the figure is pretty bland with no leg printing, but this was 2010 after all. Still, like I said though, the helmet with its blue markings just looks really cool to me. Next up, at the 55th spot, I have SW0129 442nd Siege Battalion Trooper. This figure appeared in only one set, being 7260 Wookiee Catamaran back in 2005, and a lot of people really like this figure. Some will say it's one of the best classic Phase 2 clone troopers that LEGO has made, but honestly, I'm just not the biggest fan of the green markings. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think the figure looks really awesome, and I love all of the classic Phase 2 clone troopers, but me personally, I just think this one's the weakest because I don't like the green, but like I said at the beginning, this list is pretty subjective. Up next, at the 54th spot, I have SW0130 91st Mobile Recon Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 7250 Clone Skywalker back in 2005, and this figure is very simple, but it's also one of my favorites. I mean, I didn't put it any higher because it is so simple, but I still think it looks really cool. I love the 91st Recon Corps. They're one of my favorite legions, and I think for 2005, LEGO did a pretty decent job at capturing them, and it's overall just a pretty good figure. Coming in at the 53rd spot, I have SW0131 Kashyyyk Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 7261 Clone Turbo Tank all the way back in 2005, and it's very famous for being, well, the very first Kashyyyk Trooper that LEGO had ever made, and also the only one they had ever made for 9 whole years until the 2014 ones came out. So because of that, it's got a lot of fan favoritism, and I can see why. I think for 2005, it was really great, and it was also one of the first, if not the first, I think, Clone Trooper to have leg printing, although I didn't put it higher because, I mean, obviously it has that sand green look, which looks really cool. It's just not accurate. A lot of people look past that. A lot of people don't like it. I personally don't mind it, but I definitely wouldn't go so far to say that it's the best OG Clone Trooper. Up next, at the 52nd spot, I have a very underrated classic clone trooper in my opinion, being SW0297 91st Mobile Recon ARF Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 7913 Clone Trooper Battle Pack back in 2011, and I feel like this is the one trooper in that battle pack that gets overlooked because all of the attention goes to the bomb squad troopers for good or bad reasons, and I personally think this guy's really cool. Yeah, he's a bit bland without his leg printing, but I really like the Clone Wars ARF Trooper helmet molds, and on top of that, it's got some pretty cool printing. Up next, at the 51st spot, I have another ARF Trooper, being SW0378 Rancor Battalion ARF Trooper. This figure was released in one set, being 9488 Elite Clone Trooper and Commando Droid Battle Pack back in 2012, and I like this figure for all of the same reasons as the figure that I just talked about, except I ranked him one spot higher just because he's got more going on. His helmet printing is just a bit more vibrant because it uses dark red and it just pops a little bit more, and on top of that, he's got red arms, which I think looks better than just the plain white arms. There's just a little bit more going on, and that's why I think he's just a bit better. Coming in at the 50th spot, I have SW0091 Clone Shock Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 7655 Clone Trooper Battle Pack back in 2007, and there were actually two versions of this figure made. The one I'm showing here is the one with black hips, and then one that used white hips was introduced the next year in 2008 in the ATAP. But anyways, I think this is a great figure. The red Shock Trooper helmet print on top of the classic Phase 2 helmet just looks so awesome, and honestly, I'd probably say that out of all the classic clone troopers, this one was the furthest ahead of its time. It's not my favorite classic clone trooper, and I don't think it's the best, but it was impressive for its time period. Next up, at the 49th spot, I have a very infamous figure, being SW0299 Clone Bomb Squad Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 7913 Clone Trooper Battle Pack back in 2011, and I say infamous because I'd say opinions on this figure are pretty much directly split. There's a lot of people that really hate it, and there's also a lot of people that really like it, and I personally think it looks really awesome. Yes, it might be kind of goofy looking with the very bright and vibrant orange, but I just like how unique the figure is, and especially how much it pops, especially if you have it in an army. Coming in at the 48th spot, I have SW0281 Phase 2 Clone Trooper Pilot. This figure appeared in one set, being 8096 Emperor Palpatine Shuttle back in 2010, and this figure is nearly exactly the same as the V-Wing pilot that I talked about earlier from 2014. However, the main difference is that his legs and arms are sand blue compared to the light gray on the 2014 version, and that honestly makes all the difference for me. I think the sand blue pairs so much better with the white torso print in the white helmet, and that's why I gave it the 48th spot. Up next, at the 47th spot, I have the classic SW0201 Phase 1 Clone Trooper. This figure appeared in 11 different sets over the years 2008 and 2009, the most notable ones being 7675 ATTE Walker, 8014 Clone Walker Battle Pack, and 10195 Republic Dropship with ATOT, just to name a few. And honestly, I will admit this figure is a bit bland, but I mean, it's the 2008 Phase 1 Clone Wars Clone Trooper. It's extremely iconic. It's the clone trooper that started the clone army trend that's been going on for, I mean, over a decade ever since this figure released, and most importantly, the first ever clone trooper to have a full-on helmet with an actual face underneath, not just a helmet that had holes in it with just a black head underneath that we had seen for years prior. I know that's a lot, but man, this clone trooper is just a staple of LEGO Star Wars, and I mean, I had to give it a valid ranking, which is funny because the 47th spot out of 66 clone troopers doesn't sound like the best rating, but I mean, like I said earlier, there's only been a few actual bad LEGO clone troopers made. The rest have just been so good that having such a low ranking does not make them a bad figure at all. Continuing on the trend of plain white clone troopers, at the 46th spot, I have SW0126 Phase 2 Clone Trooper. This figure was released in two sets, being 7261 Clone Turbo Tank and 7655 Clone Troopers Battle Pack, and there was also a second version of this figure that appeared in the 2009 Swamp Speeder. Now, as iconic as the Clone Wars Phase 1 Clone Trooper is, I think this one's a bit better. This might just be nostalgia bias talking, but man, just something about that OG Phase 2 Clone Trooper helmet, it just looks really clean. Now, I know the rest of the figure isn't that great with pretty minimal torso printing and no leg printing, but man, those OG helmets are just hard to beat. Up next, at the 45th spot, I have SW0609 Clone Trooper Pilot. The one I'm showing here is actually the leg printed version that was in the 2015 Republic Gunship Microfighter, and the non-leg printed version came in the 2013 Gunship. Anyways, I think this pilot was definitely a significant upgrade from the Clone Wars Phase 1 pilot. The helmet just looks a lot more sleeker and a lot more accurate, and I think they just did a great job. It's really a shame that they only made this figure in two sets because there were a lot of other sets he could have fit in. Coming in at the 44th spot, I have SW0128 327 Star Corps Trooper. The figure I'm showing here is the one that came in the 2007 Clone Trooper Battle Pack, and there was another version of this figure released with a pauldron in the original Turbo Tank. But anyways, in my opinion, I think this figure right here is the best OG Phase 2 Clone Trooper. I personally just think the yellow looks really really good, and he's also got some extra printing at the top of his torso area. I mean, I'm not gonna argue that this is the best, I'm just saying I think it's the best because it's my favorite. All of the OG Phase 2 clone troopers are so good, I mean, they could all almost be equal, but to me personally, this one just stands out the most. Keeping on with clone troopers that have yellow markings, at the 43rd spot, I have SW0481 Clone Trooper Commander. This figure appeared in one set, being 75019 ATTE Walker back in 2013. I don't have a whole lot to say about this figure. I mean, I think he looks really good. I like the yellow markings. I wouldn't say he's the best clone trooper from 2013, but he definitely deserves this spot. At the 42nd spot, I have SW0438 Clone Trooper Sergeant. This figure appeared in one set, being 75000 Clone Troopers versus Droideka's Battle Pack, and I know a lot of you guys would probably rank this figure behind the Commander, but I personally just like the color on this one a little bit better. I know it's kind of like an ugly booger looking green color, but honestly I think on this trooper it looks pretty unique and cool, and that's why I ranked it one spot higher than the Commander. Coming in at the 41st spot, I have one of my all-time favorite clone troopers, being SW0439 501st Pilot. This figure appeared in one set, being 75004 Z95 Headhunter back in 2013, and obviously the reason I and so many other people like this figure so much is because of his helmet. It just looks so awesome, although it's kind of disappointing that the helmet is really all this figure has going for it, because the rest of him is pretty bland. I really think he could have used some leg printing. I mean, the other 2013 501st Troopers had leg printing, why couldn't this one? Or if not leg printing, at least have had blue arms or something, but no, the rest of the figure besides the helmet is pretty bland, and that's what kept me from putting it any higher. Up next at the 40th spot, I have SW1236 Clone Trooper Gunner. This figure appeared in one set, being 75337 ATTE Walker back in 2022, and honestly I think that out of the newer clone troopers that LEGO has been making, this one is sort of towards the better end. Yes, the helmet holes are there, and I personally don't think they look that great. I don't care to say that. I really don't care if you guys don't like them or like them. I'm just saying I personally don't think they look that great, although albeit on some troopers they do look worse than others because of the trooper's helmet printing, and I think this trooper has good enough helmet printing to where they're not as noticeable, but they're still there, and that's why I gave this trooper this spot. At the 39th spot, I have one of the newest clone troopers LEGO has made, being SW1319 Phase 2 Clone Trooper. This figure is currently available in one set, being 75372 Clone Trooper and Battle Droid Battle Pack, and I think these guys look great, especially in large numbers. They're pretty awesome army builders. Now, I definitely don't think they're as good as the 2014 Phase 2 Grunt because of the helmet holes again, but other than that, I still think they look really good, and I think this figure deserves this spot. At the 38th spot, I have SW1305 Phase 2 Clone Shock Trooper. This figure is currently available in two sets, being 75354 Coruscant Guard Gunship and 75372 Clone Trooper and Battle Droid Battle Pack. Out of all of the newer Phase 2 clone troopers that LEGO has made from 2022 until now, I think this one is the best one that doesn't have any helmet attachments or anything like that. Like, just straight up, out of all of the clone troopers that have the helmet holes fully exposed, I think this Shock Trooper looks the best. His helmet printing is awesome, and so is his torso and leg printing. This is all around just a pretty good figure that I'm always happy to get. Up next at the 36th spot, I have SW1247 501st Clone Heavy Trooper. This figure is currently available in one set, being 75345 501st Clone Troopers Battle Pack, and I think these guys are absolutely awesome. They have helmet accessories, so the helmet holes are covered up and they're actually being used for what they're meant for, and also on top of that, the printing on this figure is just awesome. I love the strap that goes around his torso, as well as his helmet printing with the two lines on either side. It just looks really good. This is all around a really good figure and one of the best clone troopers LEGO has made in recent years. Coming in at the 36th spot, I have SW1097 332nd Trooper. This figure was available in one set, being 75283 Armored Assault Tank back in 2020, and this trooper is definitely a fan favorite, not only because it looks pretty cool, but also just because it's straight from Season 7 of the Clone Wars, which everybody loves, and a lot of you guys would have probably ranked this figure higher, but I personally think it's a bit overhyped. I mean, don't get me wrong, it still looks cool, the orange patterns look awesome. I'm just not the biggest fan of the 501st blue mixed with the orange. I just don't think that looks like the greatest combination, but I can still appreciate this figure. Coming in at the 35th spot, I have SW1094 501st Trooper. This figure was available in one set, being 75280 501st Legion Clone Troopers back in 2020, and I think this figure is pretty good all around. I mean, I'd honestly say it's just the definition of being overall a pretty solid minifigure. Now, I personally prefer the 2013 501st Troopers over these just because they have the blue arms, but this one still definitely looks really solid, and I think it deserves the 35th spot. At the 34th spot, I have SW0629 Clone Trooper Lieutenant. The one I'm showing here is the leg printed version from the 2015 Hellfire droid, and like I said in the intro, there is a non-leg printed version that came in a poly bag in 2013. Anyways, I think this figure looks absolutely awesome. I love the sort of baby blue color on him, and that combined with the newer Phase 1 helmet just overall makes a really good figure. At the 33rd spot, I I have SW0492 Clone Trooper Captain. This figure appeared in one set, being 75021 Republic Gunship back in 2013, and out of the 4 sort of colored Phase 1 Clone Troopers from Episode 2, I think this one is by far the best. There's just something about the dark red that literally just makes him look like a captain. It's a shame that this figure and, well, all of the other 2013 Phase 1 Clone Troopers didn't have leg printing, but still, I mean, this is a great looking figure, and I think it definitely deserves this spot. Up next, at the 32nd spot, I have SW0837 Phase 2 Clone Trooper Gunner. This figure appeared in one set, being 75182 Republic Fighter Tank back in 2017, and if I remember correctly, this was actually the only Clone Trooper that was released in 2017. I remember it kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody was really expecting LEGO to just randomly make a Phase 2 Gunner, but I don't think anyone was complaining because this figure looks absolutely awesome. I think he's way better than the newer 2022 Phase 2 Gunner. The brown on his helmet is a bit lighter, which I think looks better, and he also has a better torso print to me at least. This is overall just a really great figure that's one of my favorites to this day. Now we're really starting to get into the fan-favorited Clone Troopers, so up next at the 31st spot, I have SW0202 Clone Commander Fox. This figure appeared in one set, being 7681 Separatist Spider Droid back in 2008, and I think he just looks awesome, and so do so many other people. This is actually a pretty valuable figure as well, as his current value is actually around $200, which makes him one of the most valuable LEGO Star Wars Clone Troopers ever made. But value aside, I just think he looks cool. The red printing is super unique, and he's got a unique helmet print along with the armor. This was overall just a great figure, especially for 2008. Now making our way into the top 30, at the 30th spot, I have SW0196 Clone Trooper Commander Cody. This figure appeared in one set, being 7676 Republic Gunship back in 2008, and this figure is honestly great for all of the same reasons that the Commander Fox figure I just talked about is great. It was really unique for the year it came out, and one of the figures that everybody was trying to get, and to this day it's been a very beloved figure, and the reason I ranked it one spot higher than Fox is just because I think the orange looks a bit better. Keeping on the theme of 2008 Clone Wars Commanders and Captains, at the 29th spot I have SW0194 Captain Rex. This figure appeared in one set, being 7675 ATTE Walker back in 2008, and yes, I like him for the same reason that I like the other two. If you didn't notice, I obviously put them right next to each other back to back, and that's just because I think they're all so good and they're nearly equal. I could completely understand why anyone would rank these 3 Clone Troopers in a different way that I did, but in my opinion, I think Captain Rex is just a little bit better than Cody and Fox because of his helmet print. Yes, they have pretty good helmet prints as well, but Captain Rex's is just a bit more unique. I like the patterns on it a lot more, and also the blue just always looks really good. Up next at the 28th spot, I have SW1206 187th Airborne Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 75342 Republic Fighter Tank back in 2022, and as some of you guys might know, the Airborne Troopers are some of my favorite Clone Troopers that LEGO has ever made, and I think this one is nothing short of that. He has an awesome helmet and some really awesome purple markings, although if you didn't know, he does have a printed waist cape on his legs. It's not super noticeable, but it is still there. I just think it's kind of strange. I think he could have just done without a waist cape in general, but still, that aside, I'm always going to favor Airborne Troopers, and I think this is a great figure. At the 27th spot, I have SW0531 Clone Shock Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 75046 Coruscant Police Gunship back in 2014, and to this day, this is one of the most fan-favorited Clone Troopers ever made, but really almost every Clone Trooper from 2014 is a fan favorite, but still, this one is great. Besides the obvious lack of helmet holes, one thing that I really like about this trooper over the 2023 Shock Troopers is that he actually has red arms. It just makes the trooper look a bit more vibrant. I know some people don't prefer the colored arms, but I do, and that's why I put it at this spot. Coming in at the 26th spot, I have a Clone Trooper that I think is very, very underrated, being a SW0298 Horn Company Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 7913 Clone Trooper Battle Pack back in 2011, and I think this guy just looks absolutely incredible, and for some reason this figure always gets overlooked, and I don't understand why. The printing is absolutely awesome. I love the sand green color scheme along with the faint yellow markings. It just looks really awesome, and this was one of the most advanced Phase 1 Clone Wars Clone Troopers that LEGO made in the early years of the Clone Wars. Coming in at the 25th spot, I have one of the most fan-favorited Clone Troopers of all time, being a SW0537 Phase 2 Clone Wolfpack Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 75045 Republic AV7 Anti-Vehicle Cannon back in 2014, and yeah, like I said, this is a very fan-favorited Clone Trooper, and I mean, I can stand by that. It looks really awesome, but honestly, I think it might be a bit overrated. I'm just saying a bit overrated because, I mean, I still gave it the 25th spot out of all of these amazing Clone Troopers. I think that's valid, but I do think a lot of people think this trooper is a lot better than it actually is, and I'm not saying it's bad in any way. I own this set, and I own a few of these Clone Troopers, and I think they're awesome. I just think people might think it's a little bit better than it really is, and if they end up getting this set, they might be slightly disappointed, but maybe that's just me yapping jumping on, and either way I gave it the 25th spot. I think that's pretty good. Up next at the 24th spot, I have ironically the other Wolfpack Trooper LEGO has made, being SW0331 Phase 1 Wolfpack Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 7964 Republic Frigate back in 2011, and yeah, it might be a bit of a hot take to put this Phase 1 Wolfpack Trooper over the Phase 2 Wolfpack Trooper, but honestly, I think this one just looks a bit cooler. There might be some personal bias there because I do usually prefer Phase 1 Clone Troopers over Phase 2 in general, but also I think this one has better printing and a better color scheme because it's actually sand blue compared to just the gray on the Phase 2 ones, and I personally just think it looks a bit better. Up next at the 23rd spot, I have the original Phase 2 Grunts, being SW0541 Phase 2 Clone Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 75028 Clone Turbo Tank Microfighter back in 2014, and believe it or not, this was the only plain white Phase 2 Clone Trooper that we had gotten for literally 10 years until the newest ones just came out in the battle pack, and I and many others think this one is a lot better than the newer ones that just came out. And really for me, yeah, I hate to say it again for the people that don't like to hear this, but it's the helmet holes. That's why I think this one is better, because it doesn't have them. And also on top of that, it's just a very iconic minifigure that LEGO for some reason only released one time. Coming in at the 22nd spot, I have what is currently the most valuable LEGO Clone Trooper, well, at least I think the most valuable LEGO Clone Trooper, and that is SW0315 Shadow ARF Trooper. This figure appeared in a May 4th promo polybag back in 2011 that was only available on May 3rd and May 4th with purchases of $75 or more. So basically on May 3rd and 4th in 2011, if you spent $75 at a LEGO store or on lego.com, you would get this figure for free. And since it was only available for 2 days, since then it has become pretty rare, and that's why it's so valuable. Its current value is actually around $400 to $500. But anyways, its value is not why I ranked it so high. I ranked it so high because it just looks really awesome. I really like Shadow Troopers in general, especially the Shadow Stormtroopers, so of course a Shadow Clone Trooper is gonna be even better. The black with the sand blue printing just looks really good. Yes, it doesn't have leg printing, and I actually think this is the highest ranked non-leg printed figure on this list, but still it just looks really good, and I mean, I had to give it a good spot. Next up at the 21st spot, I have SW1248 Clone Trooper 501st Specialist. This figure appeared in one set, being 75345 501st Clone Troopers last year in 2023, and yeah, a lot of you guys are probably gonna disagree with this pick, but I mean, hey, those macro binoculars are just absolutely awesome. It took LEGO a really long time to finally make this helmet accessory, and they did, and it looks pretty good. Yeah, I wish the binoculars themselves would have had some type of printing on them, but I don't think it's that big of a deal, and those binoculars on top of this really good looking 501st Trooper just makes for a great figure. Now making our way into the top 20, this is where things are really gonna start to get kind of dicey, but anyways, at the 20th spot, I have SW0445 501st Clone Trooper. This figure appeared in two sets, one being 75002 ATRT and 75004 Z95 Headhunter, both from 2013. And like I said earlier, I preferred this version over the 2020 version just because the blue arms give it so much more character, and also the blue itself on these troopers is just a bit darker, which also just gives it more character to say. And overall, I just think it's a great figure, and I think it's the best plain 501st Trooper that LEGO has made. Up next at the 19th spot, this one might be a bit of a hot take, but I have SW0606 Phase 2 Geonosis Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 75089 Geonosis Troopers Battle Pack back in 2015, and there's been a lot of controversy around these figures and around this set really, because they actually did not exist in Star Wars before this set. LEGO literally made them up, and since LEGO made them up, it actually made them canon. And a lot of people had problems with that. I personally didn't really care that much because I think the troopers look absolutely awesome. I think the airborne troopers are a bit better, which you'll see later on in the list, but the normal Phase 2 Geonosis troopers, they look really dang cool, and they're really unique as well. Up next at the 18th spot, I have SW1189 Phase 1 Clone Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 40558 Clone Trooper Command Station back in 2022, and yes, without a doubt, I think this is the best plain white Clone Trooper that LEGO has ever made, by a long shot. I mean, I honestly don't think they could get a plain white Phase 1 Clone Trooper or Phase 2 Clone Trooper any better than this right here. The helmet looks absolutely perfect, he's got incredible torso printing as well as printed legs and printed feet. It's just a really good looking figure, and it's a shame that LEGO has only included it in one set so far. I mean, I really hope this thing returns soon. Coming in at the 17th spot, I have a pick that might confuse some of you guys, but hold on, let me explain. I have SW0453 212th Attack Battalion Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 75013 Umbaran MHC back in 2013, and yes, some of you guys might be wondering why I ranked this figure so high, because it clearly has yellow markings when it's literally labeled as a 212th Trooper, so instead it should have orange markings, therefore making it very, very inaccurate. But the reason I ranked it so high is because if you set the label, I guess, of this figure aside, this is the closest thing that we have ever gotten to a 327th Star Corps Trooper. I'm pretty sure all of us have been wanting LEGO to make 327th Star Corps Troopers for literally forever at this point, and for some reason they still haven't done it, but hey, this is the closest thing we've gotten, and that's why I ranked it so high. But obviously I couldn't rank it any higher because it's labeled as a 212th Trooper, and it doesn't even have the right helmet print if it was a 327th Trooper. Up next at the 16th spot, I have SW1146 Clone Commander. This figure appeared in two sets, being 75309 Republic Gunship back in 2021 and 40556 Clone Trooper Command Station back in 2022. And when this figure first originally appeared in the gunship, everyone was pretty disappointed because none of us really wanted a Clone Commander in a UCS Republic gunship, so it kind of got some unnecessary hate, which was pretty much just LEGO's fault for putting it in that set. However, they did later release it in the Clone Trooper Command Station, and I think that's when a lot of people really realized how good this figure actually is. And I mean, yeah, it's really dang good. The updated Phase 1 printing along with all of the yellow markings just looks really, really awesome, and I really hope that someday LEGO will make the other three troopers from episode 2 in this sort of updated style, being the sergeant, the lieutenant, and the captain, because I mean, the commander looks absolutely incredible. Now I want one in blue, red, and green. Next up at the 15th spot, I have SW1207 187th Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 75342 Republic Fighter Tank back in 2022, and this is actually one of the few times where I'll prefer the normal trooper over an airborne trooper in a set, because the normal Phase 2 troopers in this set have more purple markings, which I think makes them look better. I don't know, I just think the purple and white is such a cool combination, and they're just really unique figures. And they were also the last clone troopers to be made without helmet holes. Coming in at the 14th spot, I have SW1093 501st Jet Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 75280 501st Legion Clone Troopers back in 2020, and I know some of you guys might think this is a bad placement for this figure, but I mean, hey, I think this is actually the best 501st Trooper LEGO has made. Well, not the best normal 501st Trooper they've made, I said that about the 2013 one, but just the best variant of a 501st Trooper they've made. He's got really unique printing, especially on his helmet, and one of my favorite things about him are the little red markings on his helmet. I just think the red and the blue fit so nicely together and makes for a cool look, and he's got blue arms, which you guys already know I prefer over the white arms. Up next at the 13th spot, I have a figure that most of you guys have probably been wondering where I was gonna place, and that is SW0450 Captain Rex. This figure appeared in one set, being 75012 Bark Speeder with Sidecar back in 2013, and as all of you guys know, this is one of the most popular and fan-favorited clone troopers ever made, because for 10 whole years, this was the only Phase 2 Captain Rex that LEGO had ever given us, and because of that, it might have gotten a little bit overhyped. I personally don't think it's as good as people say it is. I feel like his helmet printing was great for 2013, but today wouldn't really hold up, and also, this is kind of ironic to say, but this figure actually needed helmet holes. I know Phase 2 clone troopers back then didn't have helmet holes, but this was a figure where they were actually needed to fit his helmet accessories, because I think he looks kind of strange without his helmet accessories. Other than those few things, I mean, I still think this is a great figure, and he's very iconic, and I mean, I gave him the 13th spot after all. However, I actually think the 2023 Phase 2 Captain Rex is a bit better, and that's what comes in at the 12th spot. This figure is only available in one set, being 75367 Venator Class Republic Attack Cruiser, and I mean, yeah, despite the controversy surrounding this figure, I think it's a little bit better than the 2013 version, and the main reason for that is because of its helmet. The upgrade from the 2013 Captain Rex helmet to this helmet is just so crazy. I think this one looks so much better. Yeah, it has the helmet holes, but I don't care in this scenario because this is where they're actually needed. The only scenarios where I really care about helmet holes are on troopers that don't necessarily need them, especially if they're in a set that doesn't even include helmet accessories, but that's off topic. I think this Captain Rex helmet looks absolutely awesome. Also, a lot of people over complain about the big ammo pouch as well as the big pauldron. I do think the pauldron is too big, but on the other hand, the ammo pouch doesn't bother me that much. What does bother me though is obviously the printed waist cape. Like most people, I think for a figure like this in a $600 set that needed a physical waist cape to complete its look, but they still decided to give us those two karate belts on the side of its legs, and it just doesn't look that good. But from the legs up, it does look good, especially that helmet like I said, and on top of that, it also has arm printing that I forgot to mention. I mean, this is just a pretty great figure. The only downside is the printed comma. Now, what might be even more controversial than me putting the 2023 Phase 2 Captain Rex over the 2013 Phase 2 Captain Rex is that coming in at the 11th spot, I have SW0605 Geonosis Airborne Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 75089 Geonosis Troopers Battle Pack back in 2015, and like I said earlier, with the normal Phase 2 Geonosis Trooper, these troopers were completely made up by LEGO, and it caused a lot of controversy. But again, I don't really care. They look awesome, and like I said, I think the Airborne Trooper looks a lot better than the Phase 2 Trooper. Yes, I know some of you guys are probably thinking this figure deserves to be nowhere near the top 10 or even the top 20, but honestly, I don't really care. I think these guys just look really cool, and if you have the battle pack, I think you'd understand. Now, finally, making our way into the top 10, at the number 10 spot, I have SW0519 Kashyyyk Trooper. This figure appeared in 2 sets, but obviously the most important one is SW035 Kashyyyk Trooper's battle pack back in 2014, and this is another clone trooper that actually did not exist in Star Wars until this battle pack was made, but unlike the Geonosis troopers, this clone trooper actually later appeared in Battlefront 2 in 2017, so I guess it has more validity to it. But that aside, I think this trooper just looks really dang good, and I think a lot of other people agree with that. It was one of the very first clone troopers released in 2014, and it really gave us a good glimpse at how good LEGO could actually make their clone troopers at that time period. At the number 9 spot, I have a figure that I think gets overlooked just a little bit, but it definitely still does have a fan base, and that is SW0524 91st Mobile Recon Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 75037 Battle on Seleucami back in 2014, and LEGO calls this figure a 91st Mobile Recon Trooper, but a lot of people actually refer to it as Commander Neo because Commander Neo looks the same as all of the other 91st Recon Troopers. But regardless, whatever this figure is called, it looks really good, and like I said earlier, the 91st Recon Corps is one of my favorite, if not my favorite clone legion, so there might be just a little bit of bias there, but not completely, because again, it just looks so good. I think they got the helmet down completely perfectly, and he's also got a cool torso print with the satchel going across, as well as him having one white arm and one red arm. I just think that looks pretty cool. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and go through every single detail of this figure, but just, it looks good, and I think they couldn't have done any better. Coming in at the number 8 spot, I have another figure that I think gets a bit overlooked, and that is SW0380 Phase 1 Commander Gree. This figure appeared in one set, being 9491 Geonos and Canon back in 2012, and like I said, I never see anybody talking about this figure, and I honestly don't know why. I think he's one of the best Clone Wars clone troopers that LEGO ever made. I mean, I put him in the top 10 after all. He's got very detailed printing all over, especially his helmet print. I mean, I think LEGO did a wonderful job on it, and his torso and legs also look really good as well. Coming in at the number 7 spot, I have one of the most fan-favorited Phase 1 commanders ever made, and that is SW0330 Commander Wolf. This figure appeared in one set, being 7964 Republic Frigate back in 2011, and for 2011, this figure was literally so far ahead of its time. Not only does he have incredible printing on his helmet, his torso, and his legs that would easily hold up today in 2024, he's also got a custom head print with one eye missing because he is Commander Wolf after all, and Commander Wolf is missing one eye like we all know from the Clone Wars, and LEGO really just went all out on this figure, especially for 2011. Coming in at the number 6 spot, I have SW1100 212th Airborne Trooper. Now the one I'm showing here is from 75286 General Grievous' Starfighter back in 2020. The original version of this figure was released in the Utapau Troopers Battle Pack back in 2014. The only difference is that the newer 2020 style, which I'm showing here, just has a few tiny extra details, being some dirt stains on his helmet that make him look like he's been through battle. But regardless, whether it's this one or the 2014 version, the 212th Airborne Trooper is one of the best clone troopers LEGO has ever made by a long shot. I mean, you guys know at this point that I really like the Airborne Troopers, and the 212th Airborne Troopers are one of the coolest looking clone troopers in Episode 3, and LEGO just pretty much did a flawless job here. I genuinely do not think it could be any better. Now making our way into the top 5, at the number 5 spot, I have SW1233 Phase 2 Commander Cody. This figure is currently only available in one set, being 75337 ATTE Walker. Now the other clone troopers from that set are not the greatest, but man, this Commander Cody is really good. Until this set had released, we had been waiting on this figure for years and years, and after a very long time, LEGO finally gave it to us, and honestly, I think they delivered. Really, the only downside about this figure is that it doesn't include Commander Cody's jetpack, which definitely does suck because I think his jetpack was definitely a pretty significant part of his look, but in the end, that is just an accessory, and with the figure itself, I think they did a really good job, basically near perfect. His printing is great, and his helmet looks awesome. I mean, I don't have much more to say. I think he deserves the number 5 spot. Next up at the number 4 spot, I have SW0522 212th Attack Battalion Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 75036 Utapau Troopers back in 2014, and this is one of the most significant clone troopers that LEGO ever made. 2014 was really the year where LEGO sort of broke through the early 2010s era of LEGO Star Wars and started to make sets and minifigures very modern and sort of pushed the boundaries, and this Airborne Trooper was a perfect example of that. While technically, yes, it is the second time that they've attempted to make a 212th Airborne Trooper, the first time obviously being that 2013 one where it was all yellow, I just like to consider that this was really the first time they made a 212th Trooper in general. I think it literally looks absolutely incredible, and they could not have done a better job, and to make it even better, they didn't put it in a big expensive set. They put these guys in a battle pack where they were very, very easy to access. Now, continuing on with very, very significant LEGO Star Wars Clone Troopers, at the number 3 spot, I have what is arguably the most significant clone trooper ever made, and that is SW0518 Kashyyyk Scout Trooper. This figure appeared in 3 sets, but the most notable one is obviously 75035 Kashyyyk Troopers from 2014. And I mean, again, like I just said, with the Utapau Troopers, 2014 was really just one of the best and most boundary-pushing years of LEGO Star Wars, and when I started this list, one of the very first things that came to my mind was that I have to put the 2014 Kashyyyk Trooper and the 2014 Utapau Trooper in the top 5, and I did, and I think they definitely deserve that. This Kashyyyk Trooper started so many things for LEGO Star Wars, but the most notable was obviously the massive wave of Kashyyyk mocks that came after this battle pack was released. Literally everyone, I mean everyone, people that weren't even mock builders at the time were building Kashyyyk mocks because of this battle pack. It just started such an amazing era for LEGO Star Wars, and on top of that, the figure itself just looks really, really nice. They actually made an exclusive Kashyyyk Scout Trooper helmet mold just for this figure that was definitely a significant upgrade from the 2005 Kashyyyk Scout Trooper, because that just used the Imperial Scout Trooper helmet mold. So this really was the perfect 41st Elite Scout Trooper or Kashyyyk Scout Trooper that we had always wanted, and LEGO just did an amazing job. Coming in at the number 2 spot, I have one of the most fan-favorited and just all-around best clone troopers ever made, and that is SW1003 Phase 2 Commander Gree. The one I'm showing here is from the 2019 ATAP. There was also one released in 2014 that is nearly identical. The only difference is that the tan on his legs is a bit brighter. Not a very big difference at all, but anyways, this is just such an incredible figure. Commander Gree is one of the most awesome looking clone troopers in episode 3 and just one of the coolest characters in the Clone Wars, and LEGO just did yet again a perfect job. I do not think this could be any better. His helmet is perfect, his torso is perfect, and his legs are perfect. This is just an incredible figure, and I had a really hard time debating between this figure and the figure that's at the number 1 spot, between which one should be at the number 1 spot, and while this Commander Gree technically is perfect, I gave into my bias a little bit, so at the number 1 spot, I have SW0377 ARC Trooper. This figure appeared in one set, being 9488 Elite Clone Trooper and Commando Droid Battle Pack back in 2012, and this figure right here is literally just legendary. LEGO actually gave us an accurate Phase 1.5 ARC Trooper helmet mold, and it just looks awesome. It was like they just dropped this mold on this amazing clone trooper out of nowhere and then never made it again for some reason. And not only the helmet, the rest of the figure looks awesome too. He's got a cool brick built backpack, as well as a red pauldron and a black waist cape. It all just looks really good. However, where I gave into my bias was that this figure is technically not 100% perfect like Commander Gree is, and that's because, well, his legs actually have the same problem that the newest Phase 2 Commander Fox has, and that's that the printing at the top of them should be white, but it's actually a slight pinkish color because of the red plastic underneath. And yes, that is a very apparent flaw with this figure. It's definitely not near as bad as it is on the Phase 2 Commander Fox that just came out, but it is a flaw that is just blatantly noticeable to the eye. But the rest of this figure is just so good, and honestly the pink legs aren't even bad, that it just felt wrong to not put it at the number 1 spot, and it especially felt kind of wrong to put Commander Gree over this figure as well. So still, despite its apparent leg flaw, I think this is the best clone trooper that LEGO has ever made. Anyways guys, that's gonna do it for this video. Let me know what you think about my list down in the comments below. If you agree, if you disagree, whatever you want to say. If you're new, please consider subscribing, and if you want to check out more of my videos, you can see them on the end screen right now.